Today is the fourth day of the March-April 86 retreat. We talked about attention, awareness, perception yesterday. One question that comes up frequently with awareness, in regard to awareness, is where does it come from? Either how can I produce it? Can I practice for it? Or where does it come from if the I is not involved? Again, in asking a question like this, can one look at the question? Doesn't it reflect our very pattern of thinking? Everything has to come from someplace. The question also is, where does it go when dreams crop up? Everything has to come from someplace and has to go someplace. We are also logical. Thinking that way, having been trained for centuries, millennia to think in those terms, then we assume that reality must conform to this way of thinking. And of course we can give places or reasons where things come from, why they come from there. And then we're satisfied because a question that is asked exerts a certain pressure on the body-mind to get an answer that's also habitual. And getting the answer relieves that pressure, the pressure that the question created, but it does not answer anything. Unless one looks at a question that one asks in depth. Doesn't it become quite clear from sitting? Not just sitting. We're using sitting in a very wide way. Openly listening, attending, watching, looking, observing, feeling. Either attention is there or there is inattention. Either the mind is enmeshed in thoughts, dreams, memories, problems, projections into the future, all of which is the activity of thinking, or that is interrupted by a moment of attention. Well, just take the moment right now, not become quantitative about it, because that's also our way of thinking. How much of this can I get? How quickly? How soon? With what effort? And so forth. The train of thought is interrupted by a moment of attention. There's attention of the fact that one was embroiled in a train of thought. that last thought at the instant of attention is already reverberating in the mind as a memory, isn't it? We don't know these precise physiological mechanisms, and it's not necessary. Much better than to pore over a volume of brain physiology is to begin to observe the activity of the brain oneself from within. Immediate, without mediation of someone else's external brain research. At the moment of attention, listen right now. Boom, boom, quack, 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 quack. And that can't imitate it. At this openness of listening, this whack, 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 that's not a thought, is it? Thought may quickly come in and say, oh, these are the geese, or somebody else says it's a frog, and one wonders who's right. And then with that, goodbye listening. Where has the attention gone to? The attention is gone, and the argument is there. That's all one can say. There's a question which says, where does the flame go when it goes out? Can you feel how this invites the brain to either philosophically, speculate scientifically, examine, or poetically expound where the flame goes when it goes out? All these invitations issued by this sentence where in fact it's gone. Strike a match and there it is. If one is sitting for a moment with no intentions, no motives, not wanting something, expecting or fearing something, just listening, relaxed, not striving the tenseness of the future achievement of whatever, liberation, attention, enlightenment, all of that has been seen as so many ideas taking one away from this instant. So, sitting openly listening, let us imagine an airplane comes by. We're here far enough from traffic at the camp. The cars were just zooming by, so it was not so pleasant, but it was a good example for listening. If there's this listening without thinking, without knowing, without trying to represent to oneself the state that one is in, to give oneself a bit of security, one is just listening, and the hell with security. It's just listening, and when the mind, the brain, the memory, whatever it is not trying to explain from memory, to know from memory what is happening, then one realizes there is no coming and going. There is nothing to say that the car came or that the car went. There's not even the need to say car. There's just That's it. And the question in this state of listening, attending, not needing the security of knowing or the entertainment of knowing, of thinking, speculating, or dreaming, when that's absent, there's just this whack, 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 whack. It's not coming, it's not going. Either it's there or isn't there. That's a fact. Can be verified by each one of us. If there's actually, just comes to mind right now, a famous story, a dialogue happened in China, in ancient China, where two people walk across a field, must have been this time of the year, sort of gushy underfoot. Not much green yet, but a brown that's alive with, I don't know with what. And a train of geese flying overhead. Tremendous racket. We were once on Martha's Vineyard, and where the train of geese was right over the house. That was their track. In the evening, they flew to a little island in the pond. In the morning, they flew back. That was before they had left. Is it legitimate to say this at times? When the geese are gone, they have left? Of course, they leave for the south. We're not talking about this moment of attention. So when these geese fly overhead, it's not just whack, 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 but the flapping of the wings makes you feel the tiles are going to take off from the roof. Such a tremendous wind power created. So these geese flying over the two ancient Chinese, they were there. And one asked the other, what is that? And the other responded, those are geese. And the questioner comes back, where are they now? And the answer is, they have flown away. With which the questioner tweaks the nose of the faithful answerer. And something dawned on this person at this moment. Maybe an opening up that happens when name and coming and going are just seen for what they are, a mental structure, and in this insight collapse. And when all these mental structures collapse, then there is freedom, openness, space, no division, no me or you, coming or going. As mental concepts which divide this life of conceptualization and living in conceptualization from actually living, listening, feeling, hearing, seeing, without the interference of conceptualization. So, does one see where the question, where does attention come from, where that question comes from? It's there when the intellect dominates, wants to know, to feel a little bit secure. It's not very secure. And not that There's security in getting an answer from where attention comes from, but in engaging and indulging over and over again in this process of asking questions and getting answers. And another moment has been lived in habit, and the meager security provided by habit. One question that comes up frequently, particularly if one has practiced Zen or has had a spiritual practice in the past. The question, what is the difference between attention and concentration? Most of the time, if one engages in what is called spiritual training, one is given a practice to concentrate the mind. We used to do it too. I think we still have some booklets, Introduction to Zen Training, in which we mention counting inhalation and exhalation. We don't, when we have a workshop, we don't talk about that anymore, or don't suggest that people count inhalation and exhalation or count anything. But it is not very effective, because a lot of people throughout the years that I've talked with people, there has been maybe in the beginning some feeling I'm getting someplace, but then often later the complaint that the practice isn't effective, the mind wanders, the concentration is poor, how can I make it stronger? But concentration, as it is usually practiced, is fixing the mind onto something, a word, an idea, a picture, an image, a concept like universal kindness or loving kindness, a koan meaning some puzzling sentence or just a word taken from a koan. In Zen centers who practice with koans, the word mu is being concentrated upon, because it isn't said that one concentrates on it, it's said one questions it, but it is a form of concentration anyways. Focusing the mind on something. One of the most frequent ones is the breathing. Focusing on the breathing, each inhalation and exhalation. Trying to avoid having thoughts come in, having distracting feelings, having anything distract the mind from focusing on the inhalation and exhalation. This concentration can have very quick, noticeable results, namely a feeling of energy, heat, One begins to take the layers of shawls and sweaters off. And of course also a feeling of getting someplace, being successful, which is the creation of image, or the reinforcement of an image of being good at something. Or if it doesn't work out, the image of not being good at it, being a failure, not being as good as somebody next to one or across the room who seems really to be concentrating. It invites self-appraisal, even though one is told not to do it. It happens. This is how the mind functions. The reason that one is given a concentration practice is usually to attain a goal, the goal of maybe at first a quiet mind, a mind that is not plagued by constant thoughts, emotions, sensations, a mind that is made quiet through this concentration practice, which involves control of distractions. The very concentrating on something is the control of the other. Putting the energy into that, somehow there's a control mechanism invoked in the brain to keep thoughts cut off or under control. Not to appear, to repress even. Further goals that are held out or talked about are liberation, enlightenment. I think maybe everyone in this room has practiced or is still practicing concentration at times. Or not even still, as that's what one is doing here. It's up to each one what one wants to do, feels like doing. Nothing is given as a practice. I don't use the word practice. I think I dropped it the day that a new start was made, but people still do mention my practice is good, my practice is getting better. I haven't practiced in a while. And it may just be a word carried over and not used for the same activity that one used to use the word for. It may just be a convenient way of communicating. So just because somebody refers to a practice doesn't mean anything. One has to find out, what do you mean when you say practice? And then talk about it, if the person is so inclined. Because the reason that I don't use the word is that it has so many implications that by practicing one will become better and better and better and eventually perfect. We had that saying in Germany, I think it exists in this country, in English, that practice makes perfect, which used to be used by my piano teacher ad infinitum, but it did not make me perfect. On the contrary, it seemed to me the more I practiced, the worse I played. I resisted having to practice. You know, it's so nice as a child. We were someplace this past February with our grandson up in the mountains. There was an old piano sitting there a little bit off from the dining room. He discovered it immediately and could hardly reach it and delighted in pounding the piano. And people were very patient there. I think our whole ear apparatus has become much more tolerant with all the rock and TV and stuff. In my day, this would have been immediately, what's a good word? He wouldn't have been allowed to pound around on his piano. But his parents didn't mind, and the other guests didn't mind, or at least didn't seem to be at all disturbed. So here he was, playing. He loved it. When he pounded too loud, I said to him once, it's real easy to pound loud, but to play quietly. And see how we indoctrinate our children. He went back and played real quietly. And his parents took notice. Benjamin loves the piano. Maybe we should get a piano. And I thought, oh no. Because once the piano is in the house, a teacher follows. Very soon, and then the prosaic part starts of having to practice. Now with some people, and maybe it works, or I don't know how, but with me it didn't work. I hated it. All the joy was gone. So let each of us who uses this word practice look whether the word itself has an influence upon our way of doing this thing, whatever we're doing on the mat. Because words, in fact, have power. We talked about it, I think, several times during this retreat already. That's why it is good to carefully find the best word, not the perfect word. A word is always limited. Or if one uses a less than perfect word, to be aware of its limitations, and in communicating to be flexible and free, to change, to explain, to look. We were talking about concentration and how or whether it differs from attention. Concentration can be practiced, and there can be progress made in concentrating the mind, in bringing about a still mind, but it has this element of excluding and controlling. And there is this me there who does that as the thought, I must control, I must concentrate, I must get better. And the feeling, the concrete feeling that I am effective in my control, or I am ineffective in it, I'm failing in it. It really strengthens the feeling of a doer and his or her doings, practice, results. And as far as I'm aware, in talking with people, having done it myself, there is no questioning of this whole process. Who's doing it? What is this felt dualism? What is this working toward a goal? What happens when the mind gets used to excluding and controlling. And is this whole process a conditioning process of the mind, becoming habitual, automatic, mechanical? All of these things can come to light in awareness, attending. If this attending in fact has no goal, no practice to it, no exclusiveness, no excluding. In other words, no labeling this a distraction and that an interference, but taking a look, an instant look at what is felt as a distraction and wondering why is it felt as a distraction. Not philosophizing about it, but seeing it. Seeing that when the mind starts dreaming, when dreams are indulged in or enjoyed, or that there's no attention. It's only when there's a moment of attention one realizes one has been dreaming. Because this can become clear if one is concentrating. I'm not saying that this only reveals itself in awareness. I'm not saying that. But awareness is not exclusive. It does not establish any one focus to the exclusion of everything else. People ask me, well, is it wrong then to attend to the breathing? At this moment, see how the thinking works. If there is no exclusive focusing on the breathing, if that is said, then the mind thinks in its opposite. It must be wrong, therefore. This thinking in opposites is a red thread through our whole life. If I'm not good, I must be bad. If I'm bad, I must become good. This whole cutting up thinking into right and wrong, good and bad. But we weren't talking about this right now. The question was, is it wrong or is it right to attend to the breathing? When this is a theoretical question, because when there is attention, then the breathing is obviously noticed because it's there. We're doing it all the time, or it is happening. It's not really anybody doing it. Or do you have the feeling that you're breathing? If that is the feeling, it merits looking at it, whether there is a real strain on inhaling and exhaling for fear that if I'm not doing it, I may not get enough air. Or I may be breathing wrong. People reported that very frequently when this was the first given practice, that by just observing the breathing, they felt they were suffocating. I wonder why this was. Whether it is so difficult or near impossible to observe something without immediately controlling. Or the feeling being that I should do something about what I'm observing. Isn't that what really happens? One feels the pain, isn't there instantly the feeling I should do something about it? Thoughts are coming, I should do something to get rid of these thoughts. see first of all the automaticness of this habit of thinking. No matter what it is thinking about, it doesn't matter of the content, but what the content is. Observing something, I should do something about it. Get rid of it, keep it, improve it. We have been left totally untrained in leaving things alone, and yet not going to sleep over it. An intense interest, full of energy. Interest has energy to observe what is going on without interfering. I shouldn't say we haven't been trained. There is a branch of science in which there is such observation. But when you see these nature movies on TV, you can almost feel the itch to get in there and do something. So I may see this totally wrong, but you observe a herd of elks migrating over a snowy plain and licking their lichen on the way, and there somebody has to be there in a helicopter shooting arrows, not to kill, but to immobilize them temporarily, to do something, to find out how these elks migrate. And then the interference, having them temporarily out of commission, putting a little label on. And it may be a good purpose, but you can, in watching the faces of these people, they have something to do. They have. It seems as though there is something we can do for these elks or with these elks. We're not killing them for food or for fur anymore. It's a new kind of hunting. It's so out of our patterns, out of our programs to observe intensely. With this intensely, I don't mean I'm observing. Sometimes these words create this impression. I have to come to that too, maybe not today. I talked about passion yesterday, and several people felt with some kind of dismay that I don't have this passion. Then comes the comparison, and then I don't have it, and is there something wrong with me if I don't have the passion? So words have to be used so carefully. I may not get to that today. Maybe we'll get to it tomorrow. But this intense interest, well, it's the same thing as a passionate interest, meaning the energy is being there in the observing. Without needing to do anything. We started with the breathing. There's no need to make the breath deeper, longer, better, not so short, not so choppy. Just observing what's there as it is. And not exclusively the breathing, but whatever is there. Pain in the knee, in the back, a feeling of exhilaration or stinging eyes, the urge to cry, the peepers, the airplane, the rustling of some clothes. None of it interfering with each other, because the attention is not purposely focused on anything. One may not be able to maintain this for any length of time, but time in this work is unimportant. What is important is to be aware. If there has been inattention and one comes to, can one be simply aware that there was inattention without making a thing out of it? Not immediately interfering, and I should have done something already about this, and the next time maybe I should. It doesn't work this way anyway, it's just the way the mind works, the thought goes. So at the moment there's awareness that there was inattention, dreaming. One doesn't even have to label it. I'm giving it labels because we're talking with each other. But can there be a simple listening to what's going on? The instant the dream has interrupted. Then no energy is wasted on recrimination or regret or getting oneself hepped up for a better future. There's this ancient dialogue comes to mind where the questioner asks of his older friend, what is the way? Could also mean, what is truth? What's real? And the answer is, ordinary mind is the way. And the questioner says, how can I get it? And the older friend says, the more you try to get it, the more it gets away from you. And the questioner says, but if I don't strive and persist, how will I ever get onto this way? And the same answer, the more you strive and persist, the farther it will get away from you. But if I don't strive, how will I know it? And he says, the way is neither knowing nor not knowing. Knowing is illusion. Not knowing is blankness. If you come upon this way of no choice, without choosing, it's as vast and as fathomless as open space. How can there be right or wrong in it? We will end here for today.